making your way into a shape where your body spine can be received here by the mat. Maybe letting your palms face up so that we get some external shoulder rotation. There's this uniquely prosperous town, not necessarily unique for its prosperity, but unique for its prosperity in relation to its location. This town sits in the middle of nowhere. This town is surrounded by this wide, expansive range of open space. And yet, due to some very fortunate circumstances, the people of this town have been as prosperous as can be for as long as anyone can remember. We'll give ourselves just 30 more seconds here. Just scanning through the body, noticing what feels like what. And then when it feels appropriate for you, let's bring our knees into a bent position if they're not already there. And we'll take our left ankle across our right thigh for a little external hip rotation. Just check in on how the hip feels without any warm up, just noting how that hip flexor, lateral edge of the hip is responding to this ask range of motion. Give ourselves just about 10 more seconds here. Just feeling how the hips are responding to a pretty good, generous ask early on. And then we'll release the left foot back down to the mat, both feet. Connect with the mat. Body relaxes and neutralizes again. And let's do the same thing to the second side. Right ankle across the left thigh. Paying attention to balance or imbalance in the sacrum, in the connective tissue, wrapping from the sacrum around the lateral edges of the body. And again, how the hip flexor and lateral edge of the hip are responding. And we'll give ourselves roughly about 10 more seconds here on the second side. And when it feels appropriate, let's release the right foot down. Both feet connect to the mat. Take some energy and just put it into the toe mounds of both feet. And think about lifting the sacrum off the mat in a way in which you can still feel the mat. So we take the pressure or the weight of the sacrum off, but we can still feel the mat. And we're going to slide our sacrum across the mat laterally. So it's just gliding on top of the mat surface. So if you have a textured mat, maybe you even feel some of the friction from that texture. And here the range of motion can be your full capacity, but it doesn't have to be. We're just looking for a little lateral sway, whatever feels good, impactful, beneficial. And maybe one more time in each direction. And then we're going to set our hips all the way to the right. So let your hips slide all the way to the right as much as they're willing to go and land there. And then just kind of note how the knees have followed. And we're going to bring our knees back to neutral and then let the knees fall as far as they can go to the left without letting the bottoms of the feet come off of the mat. And take your arms out towards cactus or T. And then see if with your left hand you can reach over towards your right elbow. And we're just going to breathe into this very unique little twist here. Send the center of your breath to the center of your lung cavity and think about expanding that three-dimensionally. The left side of the left lung lobe is likely requiring a little more effort to inflate. And make sure the bottom of your feet are firmly connected to the mat. And we'll relax the knees back to neutral. Take the arms back to their side and bring the hips back to the middle of the mat so that your whole body realigns, and feel how the spine zips back into shape here. And then we're going to lift the sacrum again, that little, just enough to take the weight off and do that lateral slide. Maybe just a couple times in each direction. And then eventually, with no rush to do this, but eventually, we're going to let the hips slide all the way to the left. Let the sacrum land. Let the knees fall to the right. And once you get your knees all the way to the right, bottoms of the feet staying connected to the mat, with your right hand, reach over towards your left elbow and try to feel the breath in the middle of your chest. Really think about that three-dimensional expansion so that you're impacting the tissue around the thoracic joint. Again, now the right lung lobe is probably requiring a little more effort to inflate. And depending on your lumbar musculature, you may feel some pull and some tension around the sacrum as well. A lot going on here without a ton of physical movement. And eventually the knees will come back to neutral. Arms will come back to neutral. Hips come back to the middle of the mat. We're just going to take a few rounds of breath into the lung cavities now and just feel your capacity to inflate and release. Give ourselves just 30 more seconds just to experience our ability to respirate here. And when it feels appropriate, let's pull both thighs in towards the torso and give ourselves a nice little squeeze. Think about bringing the knees close enough to the sternum or shoulders that the sacrum is slightly elevated, that you get a little weight distribution towards the torso and away from the hips. And then see if as you do that, you can extend the lumbar by pushing the top of the ilium down and get just a little bit of lumbar structural expansion here. Sometimes taking the knees out a little wider can help offer a little bit more space around that hip girdle. And then we'll relax and let the feet come back to the ground. Let the entirety of the spinal column become neutral against the mat. And then let the knees fall to one side or the other, whatever side feels most appropriate. We're going to press ourselves up into seat, into staff. And from staff, kind of make a determination as to what is the most advantageous for you. We're going to take a forward fold, and we haven't done any real posterior warm up. So if having a prop underneath you is impactful, we have those two blankets. You could fold those hot dog style, slide them underneath, and have a supported element. If you don't feel like the hamstrings or posterior chain needs that, you can just go right into a fold here. I'd say the key is that you can receive at least some of the benefit here up into the low back. So try to transcend that hamstring only fold. Maybe give yourself, once you've landed in your fold, the opportunity to kind of walk the glutes back. That can help bring the expansiveness of the shape a little bit higher into along the spinal column. This uniquely prosperous town had this very unique position within it. This position was something that nearly everyone within the community strived for, but only one person was selected. And their job was a job of responsibility. And the responsibility of the job was one time at dawn and one time at dusk, they were to look out from this perch that they lived in and scan the horizon 360 degrees to make sure there were no dust clouds of an invading entity. And at night, that there were no fires, campfires of an invading enemy. In return for doing this job. This person was treated almost as if they were a deity. They lived in this beautiful, rised apartment with these 360-degree views. All their needs and wants were met at any time of the day or night. And this new man had just taken over this role. We'll give ourselves about 40 more seconds here. When it feels appropriate, let's bring our torso back up to vertical. We're going to take one blanket and from its hot dog fold, I guess if you weren't using a blanket, we'll get one to a hot dog fold. We'll take our ball and place that in the little taco shell there. And that's going to come behind us. And the ball will greet the center of the cervical spine. The second blanket we're going to take from a shell fold, hot dog fold once, and then fold to be a little block-like approximation. And you can just set that to the right side of your body for now, where you can easily access it. And then let's lower ourselves down until our cervical spine is greeted by that ball. And been a couple of weeks since we've had one of these ball to cervical spine realignments. So we're going to be here for a little bit of extra time. So pick a spot that feels like a good starting point. Remember that you can move the ball, the base of the cervical spine to work on kind of that hump that we often develop with our so much time with the chin down. The middle of the cervical spine is kind of the all-purpose reset. And then you also have at the base of the skull this opportunity to kind of change the pressure there at the blood-brain barrier. Just choosing the point that's right for us. And then we're going to bring our knees into a bent position, kneecaps point towards the ceiling. Connect with our block-like approximation of a blanket and let both knees fall out wide. The right knee or right thigh capturing that blanket and the left knee falling open. So we have an asymmetrical butterfly here. Bottoms of the feet together. To help make sure that while you have asymmetry in the hip openness, that the sacrum is staying as neutral as can be, pay attention to how neutral the shoulders are. If we can get the shoulders to the balanced weight bearing, the center of the weight generally at the sacrum will be the center of the sacrum. Might be off a millimeter here or there, and you may want to tweak and adjust, but aim for the sacrum to be really centered here. And so this new man he's taking over this role, and it's a great honor. There's this big kind of fanfare event. He's makes his way up the spiral staircase to this tower where he'll live. In the tower, he has this bell, and the bell has a long rope that comes down to him, and he can pull that. And at any time he rings that bell, someone will come up and they will do anything he asks for. So he gets in and he treats that bell with a lot of reverence, with a lot of respect. And he treats his job with a lot of reverence, with a lot of respect. Every morning, as the sun rises, he stands guard and he observes the entirety of the horizon in all directions. And every evening, as the sun falls, he does the same thing with true vigilance and full awareness. Could there ever be a problem? Should he ever spot something on the horizon? He has this larger bell, like this clock tower bell, that he rings not with a pull of a rope, but with a huge, like, gong hammer. And that bell is only rung one time the day he makes his way to his tower. If there's an emergency, the next time it will be rung will be either someone on the horizon or someone new coming into this tower. Check in on the right side of your sacrum here. As the body starts to relax into this asymmetry, it's easy for the weight to fall to that left hip, into that left lateral edge of the thigh. Make sure your right shoulder is anchored. And then feel a little strength in that lower right oblique, maybe to help engage and balance the sacrum. We'll give ourselves just 60 more seconds here on this first side. When it feels appropriate for you, let's bring the right knee back to neutral and then the left knee back to neutral. Feel the way the weight shifts the cervical spine as we come back into a neutral alignment, and let your neck really settle there. And then we will take our blanket propping to the second side, to the left side. Let the bottoms of the feet come together. Once again, left knee falls to the supported blanket, right knee falls open. Once again, ensure that your shoulders become an anchor of weight distribution balance, and try to find the midpoint of the sacrum as we go into this asymmetrical supine butterfly. What started off pretty tame, pretty benign. One night, man in the tower woke up middle of the night and he was starving. And he looked at that bell that can bring him anything. And he got this idea in his head that he wanted a grilled cheese. And he tried to ignore it. He tried to go back to sleep, but his brain had just locked on to this idea. And so he kind of very sheepishly pulled the cord, rang the bell, and 15 seconds later, like so fast, it was like someone was waiting outside the door for him to ring this. Someone knocked and said, "What can we bring you?" He just said, "I'm so sorry. I know it's late. I'm so hungry. If I could just get a grilled cheese." 15 minutes later, he's eating this incredible grilled cheese with these layers of cheese just kind of melting out of this homemade sourdough bread. And it's now early, early morning, and the sun is just starting peak. It hasn't crossed the horizon yet, but there's just enough light that he can see out over this vast expanse of space. And he's eating this grilled cheese, and he's just thinking about how amazing this life is that he's found his way into. And he's looking at this bell and he's thinking, how amazing it is that he can pull this cord and be enjoying this incredible treat, this thing that he wanted so bad that he didn't have to do anything but pull a little cord. And he finishes as the sun starts to rise. It's like perfect timing. He walks out and he gets the 360-degree view. And he's looking down at this town that he's grown up in. He's looking over it with such pride, knowing the responsibility that they've bestowed upon him to keep them safe, and appreciating the return he's gotten, particularly in this moment. Just a reminder that you can change the positioning of the ball. You can also remove the ball, right? If it's not benefiting you, please do. But just a reminder, you have those opportunities. Maybe a good time to check in to make sure that the opening of the right side hasn't shifted the balance in the center of the sacrum. Ensure that our shoulders are equally anchored. And we'll give ourselves about another 60 seconds here on the second side. And when it feels appropriate for you, no rush, but when it does, we're going to take the blanket out from underneath the neck and let the head come down so that the cervical spine becomes neutral. And take the ball out from that blanket. Keep it in that hot dog fold, and that can become a base. We're going to take our second blanket, bring our knees back to neutral. Let the knees find their way back to a neutral base. You can take that second blanket and just stack it hot dog style on top of the first. So we have a little blanket stack. And then just move the knees a little laterally. Try to find the sacrum to its neutral state, relaxed state. And then eventually, again, no rush to do this, but eventually we're going to lift our belt line high enough that we can slide this blanket stack underneath the sacrum. And so, supported bridge with the opportunity and a little bit of an encouragement. The encouragement is 100% overridden by any negative sensation in the lumbar to extend the legs a little bit. That doesn't mean that you need to go full extension, but you could go from full bent to maybe 2 or 3 inches out, maybe a little more. If it feels accessible for your lumbar to go fully extended legs, wonderful. Oh, there's no goal here. The goal is to make our sacrum and lumbar feel expansive. So there is a goal. It's to make our sacrum and lumbar feel expansive. There's no goal of extending the legs. Maybe one thing to keep in mind with the blankets, especially when we have them wide like this, is there is very likely at least some density collapse towards the center of weight, which is towards the sacrum here, which may mean that you're getting, even if it's the subtlest amount of internal rotation of the hips, which kind of compresses, it compresses our lateral capacity, right? So in if you're feeling like you're getting that little subtle internal rotation of the hips, taking the toes, pointing them out helps do that. You can also just think about broadening across the hip girdle here, like you're energetically just pushing edge in towards the hip capsules, hip flexors, and see if that allows for a little space. Now, that can create more tension around the sacral musculature, those connection points. So remember that you can always work towards more bend in the knees while staying with this lateral expansiveness, while not allowing everything to collapse in and get pressed and compressed together. As the weeks turn into months and months turn into years, the willingness to ring the desire bell expands. And that bell starts to be more and more frequently used. More and more requests are sent down, and more wishes, demands, requests are fulfilled. And years into this process of being the guardian of this person in the tower, this man in the tower is living like a king, maybe better than a king. We'll give ourselves just another 60 seconds here. When it feels appropriate for you, we're going to bring our knees back into a bent position if they're not already there. Lift the belt line high enough to slide the props out from underneath us and release the tailbone back down to the mat. And feel now the entirety of the spine resting neutrally against the mat for the first time in over 30 minutes here. We've had the entirety of the spine able to just relax. And let's start to add some dynamic sway to the hips, allowing for the exploration of space. Next time the knees fall over to the left, let's let them settle there. Landing in a twist. We'll be here for a little bit, but we're not going to be here for an exceptionally long period of time. 30 seconds here on this first side. It feels appropriate. Let's bring our knees back to neutral. Let the bottoms of the feet come together and the knees fall out wide. This is the first time we've done this symmetrically. And we have spent some time here opening up both sides. So this may be a much more open experience than you're accustomed to. Remember that if we start to feel some abductor fatigue, we can come out, bring the knees back together. We're not going to be here for super long, but we'll be here for enough time to let the musculature settle. And so as this bell of demands gets rung more and more, and the luxury of living in this tower becomes more and more luxurious. The work of looking out over the horizon in the morning, the evening, becomes less and less appealing to the man in the tower. Fifteen seconds here. Bring our knees back to neutral. Feel the sacrum and the musculature around the sacrum is responding to this neutral realignment. And then we'll let the knees fall over to the second side, the right side. 15 seconds on the second side. We'll bring our knees back to neutral. Let your sacrum resettle. Ask yourself if there's any movement that you might need, that you might want, that your body might appreciate before Shavasana. And if there's anything that you could benefit from, let's offer that. And then when you're ready for some stillness, let's find our way into a shape where we can appreciate just that little stillness for Shavasana. One morning, after a late night of several rounds of requests through the servant bell, as he now calls it, the man in the tower's eyes kind of blink open and he sees that it's light, but the sun is already on its way up. And he kind of lifts his head out of bed, does like a little look around, puts his head back down on the pillow and goes to sleep. And he sleeps very comfortably. It's been years. He's never seen a single thing on the horizon. And that becomes the new norm. Not long after the morning watch is shirked, the evening watch becomes too much, well, too much of a distraction, not worth the time. Sometime after that, in the middle of the night, the man in the tower wakes up and he pulls that cord to ring what he calls the servant bell. Bowl of ice cream. And he waits. There's not a knock at the door. And he rings the bell again and he waits. There's not a knock at the door. And he gets out of bed and he rings the bell as hard as he can. And he looks down into a little town below, and it's Ash. The invading army had come in the middle of the night. And they weren't warned. And there's nothing left. And he's not getting that bowl of ice cream. Let's start to bring some movement to our fingers and our toes. Into our wrists and our ankles, elbows, knees, shoulders, hips. Feel the sacrum here. Eventually, let your whole body move, let your whole body explore the space around you. And we'll utilize that movement to transition our way into a seat. Seated space. Spine gets tall. Breath fluid, eyes closed. Let your body just land, breathe, respirate, receive here. And with your next inhale, let's bring our hands together at heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself that with every privilege, there is a corresponding responsibility? And when we lose sight of that responsibility, privilege too must go away, and see how that impacts your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this morning's practice and for being you. Namaste.